Hello and welcome to Film Mixologist, the place thingy where we try to, demystify this kind of whole carburation setup, jetting thing, whatnot. So, in this episode, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be discussing these two carbs that they've been on the shop, and they had the exact opposite problem. I will describe it in a minute, and I'm going to show you how do I resolve those problems using manuals, which is very important. Now, before I go into that, this episode is going to be a bit Holley heavy, but I just wanted to show you that I do have many other manuals for SUs, for Holleys, for Webers, Dellortos, more Weber stuff. And the reason I have manuals is because, well, I'm a bit old school, so I like to have some paper stuff, even though probably you can get all of this from the internet. I don't care, I just want my paper stuff, because that's kind of how I'm wired. Honorable mention to this book here. If you want to tune British Leyland kind of A-series type engines, you really need this book, David Vizard, because it has a whole section on how to set up the Weber carbs to the British Leyland engine. And actually I've done many carbs using the information contained on these pages, and not once has a customer come back and said, oh, the carburation you did for my Mini was a bit off. Never. So therefore, get good resources and use them. So let's go on to the case of this unit here. So the first one that I'm going to tackle is this 2-barrel Holley. So this is a 2-barrel 500 CFM carb that came on the shop, and I purchased it, and I started taking it apart, and as soon as I go into the metering block, I go like, well, hang on a minute, well, that's a bit small, jetting, because this unit came with 63 jets. And if you think about this carburetor, our 500 CFM is basically a 750 chopped off in half. And because of that, I would expect to see jetting in the 70s, low 70s maybe, early 70s. So because of that, I started consulting the manuals that I have for my chart with all the specs of the carburetors to find out, okay, what is the jetting that this thing should have had. And it turns out that it needed 73 jets, 55 power valves, and also if you look here, this is the squirter for the accelerator pump. It came with a 31 and it needed a 28. So I swapped all those things over and essentially got to a position where this carb is backed to its standard calibration as it would have left the factory. Because this is quite important whenever you are restoring a carb, especially if it's of unknown origin, so it wasn't in your engine before, you never have to assume that it has the standard configuration. You always have to check it, and the way you check it is you just go into this numerical listings and component of parts, and you just go to your list number and you just go across the row and you see what are the specifications that you should have, and it's as simple as that. Generally speaking, for cars that have engines that are kind of standard engines or very lightly modified, pretty much 95% of the time, 98% of the time, you're gonna be okay with the settings. It's the car is gonna function well. You might need to do 1 or 2 little tweaks, but not more than that, not more than 1 or 2 little tweaks. So that's the case when a car is standard or off standard, kind of head cam, mild tuning is okay. So this is this unit 500 CFM that now has gone back to standard, and I'm happy to, you know, ship it out to its new owner, whoever that may be, so that I know that it's going to work. So let's do this one. This is quite an interesting example. So this cup doesn't belong to me. It belongs to a customer who brought it in, and so as he came in and I started kind of going over it. This cup was in bits. He brought it here for kind of inspection and reassembly. And I had the same problem with this. I said, okay, the jets in the primary, they look okay because it had a 50. So generally for 390 CFM carbs, which this one is, I would expect a 51. So 50, it's okay. However, in the secondary, they had a 52, which was like way lean. So then I said, okay, let me find out what's the original fitment of this carb, and for that you need this, which is the Holley Illustrated Parts and Specs. Now, so if you go here, basically what this manual tells you, if you look at the list number of your carb, what it tells you is which engine did it come out of the factory with, or what was the standard application of the engine. And it turns out that this is a list 6299, and the original fitment for this was a high performance 2-liter Pinto engine. This is what it says here in the manual, and therefore that became slightly clearer why the apparent leaning of the jets. So basically what I had to do then is I had to rejet this carb to its new configuration. So the customer is going to be using this carb in a kind of 3.9 Rover kind of kit car, and therefore this required some rejetting, because this is clearly, says the manual, it was from a Ford Pinto, and crucially I think that these were the original carbs fitted in from the factory, because the client brought in the original gaskets that he kind of took off from the carb. And these are, you probably can't see it from there, but these are cork gaskets. These are the original gaskets that came with the unit. So therefore, I knew that it was installed like that from the factory. So how do I turn this around? What I did then is I took the tuning from a list 8007, which is the most common 390 CFM carb available, and I've done 52-62. So 52 in the primary, 62 in the secondary, and that should get you 95% of the way there in terms of working for a 3.9 engine. Now, if you've been paying attention to what I said before, you've noticed that I haven't. You would have thought that in order to get this carb to work, you would have had to double the jetting, because I'm putting it in an engine that is double the size. It doesn't work like that. Certainly not on these carbs, because these carbs are designed to sit on top of an engine, and they're designed to fuel 8 cylinders of an engine anyway, or the totality of the engine anyway. So they are different, for example, with a kind of European carb. This kind of DCNF kind of scrub carb and scrub manifold. But basically, the European carbs, they're designed with a view of one barrel feeding just one cylinder. So therefore, these carbs tend to be much more sensitive to engine size and RPM than this ones. And that's why I'm confident that this tune-up, the 50-62, is going to work. And additionally, the other thing that I had to do is when I was checking the accelerator pump, I noticed that it had very little in the way of travel, and it makes sense because for a 2-liter engine you don't need that much squirt in terms of acceleration pump. So what I had to do is I had to look at a chart, which again you can find it in manuals, about the amount of throttle action that's required to activate and to give you an X amount of cc's. And I worked out that with a green cam it should be enough for its new intended application. And that's kind of how I work out, how do I work out these tuning things. I tend to work on capacity, and then if it's a capacity adjacent to that, I make some adjustments. If you've got a very rare carburetor like this one, this is an extremely rare and expensive carburetor, and you can't find it in here because the jetting is not here, I checked, then you always do well with checking this kind of illustrated parts and specs to see what was the original fitment, what is the original intended application of the unit, and that would help you a lot in terms of deciphering, you know, where do you need to go, what you need to do. So yeah, I hope you got something out of this, and thank you very much for your questions. I mean, if you got any questions about this, please let me know, and thank you very much, and I'll see you on the next episode.